All right, today we're learning our last really big major topic of the quarter. And this video is going to be a lot longer because I'm going to be going over 4 examples in depth, including 2 examples where we have nice whole numbers everywhere, and 2 examples that include a lot of fractions. You are expected to know how to work with both. If the fractions are just not cooperating with you, I am personally fine with you using delta math, and I'm sure Miss Boring is as well, in order to do those fraction calculations for you. And you're also free to convert them to decimals as well. But let's get right into it. So we're writing equations still for lines, linear lines, which means we're always looking for y equals mx plus b. Go ahead and pause this video and make sure that you can label each part of this equation. Welcome back. That means that this is our slope and this is our y-intercept. You need both. Now, if we're given 2 random points and one of those points is not the y-intercept, this means I have to solve for both. Now, if you get lucky and one of these points is a y-intercept, good to go. All you need to do is solve for slope. But in all these cases I'm going over, we need to solve for both of them. So let's dive right into it. So slope, our m is always going to be y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Let's go ahead and label everything we want to call. So we got x1, y1. x2, y2. Now let's go ahead and actually do out that subtraction. So then we've got y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So I'll wind up with -3 over 1, also known as just plain old -3. Now we're going to try to plug this guy into this equation. So what do we know so far? Well, we know it's y equals -3x plus something. And we don't know that something yet, but we can figure out that something. Let's look back at this equation. What does each part mean? This y is some y on the line, and its corresponding x on the line. So I can plug in any ordered pair into y and x, and this equation should give me back a true statement. That means that this side should equal this side when I simplify it all out. Well, do I know about some y's and x's? Absolutely. So let's go ahead and plug in one of our points. I'm going to choose to go ahead and plug in x2, y2. It doesn't matter which one you do. I'm just doing this for instructional purposes because the x's and the y's are actually different. So let's plug in our y on our line equals -3 times its x plus b. And now I solve for b. Well, first we have to go ahead and do out our multiplication. -3 times 5 gives me -15 plus b. And again, my goal is to try to get b by itself. Well, what's being done to b right now? Well, we've added -15. Let's undo that by adding +15. That cancels, so I get 16 is b. That's the other piece of my puzzle. So what's my final equation? Y equals -3x plus 16. How do we get that? We plugged into our formula to find our slope. We plugged in some points in order to solve for b, and then we rewrote with all of our information. So I'm about to write out these steps. You should absolutely write these steps in notes. Your first step is always solve for slope using the formula y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, and now give you m. Then plug in a known point into y equals mx plus b. Then solve for b. And the actual solving for b is basically going to be 2 steps. It's just always going to be multiplying your slope times the x, and then you get b by itself, either adding or subtracting it over to the other side. Nothing more complicated than that. You've already solved for y at this point. That's got a lot more moving parts. You don't have as many moving parts this time, which is good. All right, let's go ahead. Oh, actually, if you wanted to go ahead, pause, take a picture, write this down, go ahead. Now we're moving on. So for this next one, I want you to go ahead and pause the video and try to figure out on your own what's this line. All right, welcome back. We're going to go ahead and do this together. So again, we have x1, y1, x2, y2. I'm going to go through this a little faster this time, but feel free to pause, stop, rewind whenever. So that we get our slope is going to be y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So we get that that's 3 minus negative 5, keep track of those signs, over 3 minus 1. 3 minus negative 5 gives me 8. 3 minus 1 gives me 2. So I get a slope of 4, because 8 divided by 2 is 4. Now we know for our equation we have y equals 4 times x plus b. We don't know our y-intercept yet, but we know our slope is 4. Now we're going to pick a set of points to plug in. Again, just to differentiate it, I'm going to put in the first one. So then we get our y, negative 5, equals 4 times our x plus b. We get negative 5 equals 4 plus b. I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. Subtract 4 from each side. So then we get b is negative 9. What's our final equation then? It's just going to be y equals 4x minus 9. Because I solved for my slope and I solved for my intercept. Feel free to take a picture of this if that's how you take notes. Moving on. Now you won't always get that the intercept is going to be a nice, beautiful whole number, but fear not, we still know how to solve that. Don't let it freak you out. Make your 3rd grade teacher happy. All right, so again, we're going to go ahead and label x1, y1, x2, y2. This part of the process doesn't change. In fact, the whole process really doesn't change. So then we get our slope is going to be y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So let's go ahead and do that. Negative 2 minus 2 over negative 4 minus 5. Negative 2 minus 2 gives me negative 4. Negative 4 minus 5 gives me negative 9. Don't forget, a negative divided by a negative gives me a positive. So I wind up with positive 4 over 9. So then we get our y equals 4 over 9x plus b. We can still solve this the same way we've been solving it though. So plug in that we're going to go ahead, and I like working with positive numbers, so we're going to go ahead and plug in positive numbers. 2 equals 4/9 times 5 plus b. I'm going to go ahead and work this out 2 different ways. So I'm going to show you with fractions. I'm going to show you with decimals. Now, if you convert to a decimal, you're going to have to convert back to a fraction at the end, though, because we tend to work in fractions. So if we're doing this in fractions, we're just going to rewrite this both times. We get 2 equals 4/9 times 5 plus b. 2 equals 4/9 times 5 plus b. So then we get 2 equals, again, multiply across the top, 20/9 plus b. Also, since I know I'm about to start adding and subtracting fractions, let's go ahead and change 2 multiply it by 9 over 9 to make it into a fraction. We end up with 2 is 18 ninths. 2 is the same thing as 8. It's the same thing as 18 divided by 9, so I can rewrite 2 as 18 ninths, multiplying by 9 over 9, just like you used to do back in elementary school. Subtract 20 ninths from both sides. I get negative 2 ninths equals b. So my final equation is y equals 4 ninths x minus 2 ninths. Let's try another one. So let's say you hate working with fractions, you're allergic to them. I understand, a lot of people don't like them. So we're going to go ahead and do 4 divided by 9 on our calculator. So 4 divided by 9 gives me what? 0.4444 repeating. We're going to have to kind of keep this in the calculator so that we don't totally lose the fraction. So we get 2 equals 0.4 repeating times 5 plus b. Multiply that times 5. So 2 equals, we've got 2.2 repeating plus b. We're going to go ahead and subtract that from 2. So 2 minus that, which does not keep in my beautiful calculator. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract it the other way, times 5 minus 2. So it's really a negative 0.2 repeating equals b. And then we've got to try to convert that back to a fraction. Now I already know I was working with ninths. So while this is in my calculator, I can go ahead and multiply that by 9 to know that that's 2 ninths. That might have been a little bit roundabout. Again, you can go into Desmos, which I'll probably post another video of myself doing, in order to also do that calculation for you. So I get y equals 4 ninths x minus 2 ninths either way. All right, let's try one more example together. So go ahead and pause this video and try this guy on your own. All right, welcome back. So we're going to go ahead and again, we're going to always do that m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Label x1, y1, x2, y2. Even if you've done this a million times, it's easy to accidentally subtract not y's or not x's. Go ahead and label it. 4 minus 5 over negative 5 minus negative 1. 4 minus 5 gives me negative 1. Negative 5 minus negative 1 gives me negative 4. So then I get that my slope is positive 1/4. So y equals 1/4 x plus my intercept. Don't know it yet. Now let's go ahead and plug in our values. Doesn't really matter which one you pick. I'm going to go ahead and pick this guy. So then we get 4 equals 1/4 times negative 5 plus b. 4 equals negative 5/4 plus b. Now again, I already know I'm going to want to start working in fourths. So I multiply by 4 over 4, and then I get 16/4 equals negative 5/4 plus b. 16/4, 16 divided by 4 is the same thing as 4. We just did that multiplied by 4 over 4 to get there. Again, we add 5/4, add 5/4, and again, whatever app you need to use to help you with calculators, I'm fine with. We get 21 over 4 equals b. So now let's just plug this back in. We get y equals 1/4 x plus 21 over 4. And that's my final answer. It's the same process even if you've got fractions. You've just got to be comfortable manipulating the fractions in one way or another. And if you convert this to a decimal on your calculator, It would be a lot easier to work with decimals because there's no repeating numbers. You would have just gotten 4 equals 0.5 times negative 5 plus b. 4 equals whatever 0.5 times negative 5 is. I should know that. I am a math teacher. I'm going to probably go with it's like 1.25, but I could be completely wrong. Negative 5 times 0.25. I was actually totally right. Negative 1.25 plus b. Add 1.25. Add 1.25. b equals 5.25. And then again, you would have to convert that back into a fraction. But since you knew that you were basically working with fourths in the first place, you multiply it by 4 and you would get your lovely 21 over 4 back. Again, if the fractions themselves are what's giving you difficulty, Google it. There's lots of apps that will manipulate fractions for you. What I care about is that you've done the thinking here in terms of knowing I can find a slope. I know I've got to plug numbers back into the equation to solve for b. I know how to do this multiplication in some form or another using some form of technology or my brain. Add or subtract it over to the other side in order to get b by itself. And again, if you want to take some last minute photos, I'll flip through. That's one example. Another example. Another example. And again, you know how to do this. A lot of times they will give you nice, beautiful whole numbers, so I just want to show you both. Good luck.